e giga forave. Iku gloi po rusula rusu, holaka holala, alagu
Howdy, and welcome back to Film And. It is a ominous, cloudy-looking day here in Burlington, Vermont at the Film And Studios. But today I kind of want to escape that because I have a question that I asked for myself, and you can ask yourselves if you're interested. What do you think of when you think of summer? You know, beaches, sand, popsicles, kids on trampolines with golden retrievers and fireworks and a painful amount of humidity. Whatever it is. I think what comes to mind most for me than anything has got to be movies. You know, watching a good movie on a warm summer night, and not much can beat that in my opinion, you know. I always love it when me and my parents find the time to watch 12 Angry Men on the hottest day of summer. It just feels apt. You got to put yourself in that situation. And, you know, Jaws, classic summer movie. Gotta watch Jaws, preferably on the 4th of July. But, you know, I've been thinking about summer recently. You know, with the chill hand of fall quickly approaching, I've found myself recollecting on the summer months and the massive collection of summer movies that dropped this summer. You know, with many of these being pushed to this summer because of the pandemic, we got an influx of big budget, big ticket, stall-struck movies that I feel like we don't often see competing for the public eye as much. And I think that led to me finding it hard to care about any 2 or 3 specific movies, you know, that I wanted to see the most out of this massive bunch that all the studios were throwing at us. And in fact, I kind of just wanted to see them all, whether they were good or bad. So today, on Film And, I will be covering in rapid-fire mode, if I can help it, 21 movies that I saw in the summer of 2021. And I did miss a few, so don't be too sad if there's a movie you saw that I wasn't able to see. There were definitely a couple. But yeah, let's get into it. Let me take you back to May 21st, 2021, where the first movie we have came out. And we are talking about Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, coming out on Netflix. If you have Netflix, you can watch it. You know, a fascinating return, in a sense, to Zack Snyder's topical roots, talking about Dawn of the Dead, his 2004 directorial debut. But, you know, this one is landing relatively flat behind a ridiculously cliched script, and I gotta say it, pretty shallow characters. The premise never interested me, but the production itself felt well done enough, you know, and I think the movie looks and is put together pretty well. But the actual beef of the story, the action, and the tone falls so flat for me. I mean, it's probably the most creatively lacking project for Zack Snyder, I think. I often feel with even more lackluster or shallow premises for, like, the kind of simplistic story of Man of Steel, or even Sucker Punch, where the story is very simple and unassuming on paper, Snyder always comes in with some kind of, like, really creative twist on it that makes it an intriguing watch. But here it doesn't look like that's the case, you know? I also am just not a fan of zombie movies, like, at all. I think the Zombieland movies are the only 2 in the entire genre I even tolerate. But beyond that, the cinematic world of zombies has always been kind of an off-putting front for me. But bam, there we go. That is one movie down. That's about the length I'm going to try and be doing these because I've only got 30 minutes to get through 21 movies. So next up, we got later in May, Those Who Wish Me Dead on HBO Max, starring Angelina Jolie, John Bernthal, a kid, whoever plays the kid in that movie, you know. I'll be honest, better than I thought. It started off super strong, like actually, like one of my favorite movies of the year strong, seriously. But as the film went along, it did fall into some regrettable, again, story cliches that definitely bogged down the pacing and overall enjoyment of this film. You know, the government involvement and cover-up thread was really cool, but that did get kind of boring eventually. You know, it's hard to flesh that out enough, considering how little detail they put into it. The tension really did kind of slowly fade as I think the characters realized the situation kind of too early, and I feel like it just kind of became a chase and shootout for the entire second half. You know, obviously, you know, story, Angelina Jolie working at a fire tower, a witness, a young boy, a young lad, is being chased by these two government agents who are trying to kill him and cover up some misdeed that they're doing, and they end up starting a wildfire. So, you know, it was fine. It was good. You know, Angelina Jolie was pretty great. I'll say it. The kid got a little annoying, I'll admit it, but it's hard to find effective and talented child actors because most of the ones out there never really act like regular kids, I guess, but more like overly dramatic theater stage kids. And a real kid is something I think you want in a film like this. Overall, the movie is beautifully shot, in my opinion. The score is super effective, amazing score, and I wish Angelina Jolie would get more roles like this. Moving on to also late May, we've got Spiral from the Book of Saw. I did see this movie from the Book of Saw. It's been seen. I saw it. I'm trying to make a Saw joke there. I'm sorry. It's a pretty paint-by-numbers, unobtrusive edition of the Saw series. You can see the twist at the end coming from like 10 miles away, and the horror-inducing visuals only end up reminding me how played out the Saw movie visuals are at this point, you know. After the public's been exposed to so many over the years, I don't know. It's kind of hard to justify at this point. I wish Samuel L. Jackson had a better script to work with, though Chris Rock is often an engaging leading man, and I did appreciate that they got him for something so dramatic, you know, playing this cop living in the shadow of his father dealing with this serial killer, you know, Jigsaw, who was returned to wreak havoc on the city years later, and just all the tension that comes with that. And it seems that this version of Jigsaw is murdering specifically cops, policemen who have done the public wrong in the past. And that's the thing, you know, I like the intention of the film, and the ending really drives that home. I'll say this, I think this is the only one I have, but big spoiler for Spiral. Right here, big spoiler, watch out. The killer gets away. I don't say who the killer is, but the killer does get away at the end. That is kind of sort of a twist, but it's just the very end. And, you know, you're torn whether that's a good thing or not, and honestly, it feels like it's setting up for something better than this movie. It seems like it's setting it up for a better movie that's coming up. I don't know. Kind of like Rogue One, but like a worse Rogue One, but with Jigsaw. I don't know. Overall, not terribly exciting, but, you know, an okay movie. Moving on, keeping with this horror genre, you know, I ended up watching a bunch of horror movies this summer, and I think those are just the ones that were most accessible to me, or the ones that my friends just wanted to watch. So you see a bunch of them show up here. And we also had a lot of like more notable ones come up. So this next one, Quiet Place Part 2, and I'll say it, I haven't seen the first one. Yeah, I really thought John Krasinski was going to be in this one, and I was disappointed. But, oh my goodness, the opening scene, awesome. You know, the initial sound play, awesome. The visuals were fine. It worked. But I think the things that really make this movie so special are like the world building and the overall set design and the atmosphere that all that creates. It's so freaking cool. Like I was just really impressed by that. I wasn't expecting that it would do it so well. And so unexpectedly as well, you know, really delving into this idea of a silent world, an empty world. And I think it goes into territory that other movies that kind of employ that don't. And I really respect that. The ending kind of sucks. I mean, I know what the ending means, and the intention behind it is impactful, and it does leave room for the third one to pick up where it left off, because there is a third Quiet Place coming, but I don't know. It just, the delivery of the ending feels very janky. I'll say it. What else? You got Cillian Murphy. Dang, he's still dropping good performances. You know, I always forget what a good actor he is. Cillian Murphy, check him out. Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jute, they work as a pretty good family unit. And I'll say it makes me want to see the first one. I really need to go see it. Moving on, Cruella. We're into June at this point, I believe. Gosh, the thing I remember most from this is Disney reminding me that they can use literally any song in any of their movies, and any director that comes in can just use any song they want. And I think that goes to their heads every time, and they just never have any holds balls on needle drops for any of the movies. And gosh, it really lessens the effect with every time it happens, which in Cruella is like 20 times. There are many, many needle drops, and it just, I don't know, it kind of damages the art of a good needle drop, I mean, you think about like films like Boogie Nights or Slumdog Millionaire or American Psycho, even Mommy's, the indie film Mommy, their use of Wonderwall, a song I do not like. They've used needle drops so effectively, and it adds to the experience like exponentially. But with Cruella, it's overplayed, and it's done without the slightest of nuance. If something happens in the film, Disney probably bought the rights to the most recognizable song that has the closest lyrical content that relates to it. So, moving on. Emma Stone, honestly, really in the pocket for this one. Whether I like the character or not, I feel like she's really in it, which I like. The story is very similar in the why do we need this levels of that I kind of was feeling on Solo, a Star Wars story, and it falls under the same narrative pitfalls of taking the 2 or 3 things that we know about this side character, Cruella de Vil, and just stretching that out over like a 2-hour movie and explaining how she became the 2 or 3 things we know her to be, which is basically Dalmatians, fashion, evil. That was really it. But I can't talk about these forever. Moving on, rapid fire. Last one before the break. Going to Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. The Conjuring and Annabelle movies are some of the most perfect summer movies I've had the pleasure of seeing at the drive-in the past couple years, and I mean that. I feel like they don't ask particularly much from the viewer, but it remains intriguing enough to watch during a conversation between your friends. It treads that beautiful line between exciting and tonally uninspired that honestly makes these movies fun to watch. It's kind of what I wish other horror and thriller movies did, but I think this extended universe of Annabelle and Conjuring, these movies have stumbled on something really cool, and they just got lucky with a narrative structure that works again and again, and they can continue pulling from this historical context of the Warren family. But you got Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson. They're back for another exciting installment of the series. A young man is accused of murder, found covered in the victim's blood on the side of the road, claims in court as his defense that he was possessed. And guess what? The movie says he probably totally maybe was. There's some cool set pieces, serviceable tension, and just creepy summer vibes throughout. And, I will say it's not anything I actively enjoy to the point of returning to, but it is a fun watch for sure. And that is where we're going to now take a quick PSA break. I will be back with the films of the second half of the summer. See you soon.
Running late to class but still need that morning caffeine or hot breakfast to start your day out right? Download the Bite app by Sodexo and place your custom order for fast, easy pickup at Zyme. Open 8:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. Mondays through Fridays.
All right, coming back. What do we got left? We got many movies left, so we're going to run through these. Next up, In the Heights. I don't really like modern musicals, personally. There's this... for me at least, I always feel like there's this disingenuous nature of how dramatic and over the top everyone's emotions are, and they don't leave much in the way of subtlety, which usually I think can be one of regular or musical theater's greatest strengths, the use of subtlety. But often since what I have called the Renaissance in the 90s, it has been a slippery slope away from that. And In the Heights, in its own right, does buck against Broadway traditions, I feel like, with these unique songs and, thank goodness, a more down-to-earth subject matter. But it also can't escape the bombastic use of song breaks that, I don't know, they just tend to be off-putting for me, you know? It's traditionally non-fan of modern musicals talking right now. But the story's not bad, though sometimes it does feel like dialogue and pacing feels a bit too squeaky clean, you know? I feel like some of the actual grit of the real-life aspects of New York and the realistic emotions that this story is tackling does get lost at times. And you can just kind of forget it behind like the flashy dancing and the excitement. And I feel like the movie kind of doesn't give itself room to breathe sometimes, I guess. But hey, the rooftop scene will be on the highlight reel of like every 2021 year-end review, especially at the Oscars. I mean, there's no way that this doesn't get shown everywhere, because I'll be honest, that rooftop scene, if you've seen it, oh my goodness, that's amazing. It's easily it's the best scene in the film for me. Probably the best scene for me in any movie this year. Also, I preferred Hamilton. Moving on. F9. Fast and Furious, the 9th installment. It's fun and dumb and ridiculous. Honestly worth seeing on a big screen. But beside that, you know, there's not much appeal for me, mostly because at the time it was the only Fast and Furious film I'd seen. I've now seen the first one, and at this point it honestly feels like Citizen frickin' Kane compared to how they send Tej and Roman into space in a call. And no matter how many times the director says in interviews how scientifically plausible and how accurate they tried to make it, it's still ridiculous for a viewer, you know? I mean, if you're into the franchise, watch this one. It's pretty take or leave, aside from a few key moments that you kind of have to sit through quite a bit of movie to get to. But moving on. Black Widow. It's fine. I didn't know what to expect. It wasn't bad, but also kind of forgettable. And I'm going to move on from that one. I'll get to a different Marvel movie at the end here. Next up, Space Jam 2. Better than the first one. Not too much better, but better. I never liked the first one. Like, I saw it as a kid, but it had no staying power with me, and I've never really been in on like the post-ironic appreciation of the 90s Space Jam. And, you know, how people consider it some hallmark of American cinema. You know, I feel like it is definitely easy meme fodder, and I can understand that. But at the end of the day, it's still a somewhat out-of-touch encapsulation of 90s humor with terrible computer graphics, I'll say it. But we're not talking about the first one. We're talking about the new one. This 2021 Space Jam is honestly pretty fun. The visual gags are often witty and absurdist, which works really well for me. The jaunt through the Warner Bros. Universe, honestly pretty fun. Well done. I enjoyed that. It looked like the animators were doing some cool, fun stuff for them. The sections of more traditional animation, obviously I appreciated more. But the third act visually does feel like a real drop in uniquity. LeBron James is fun. His son, yeah, same. Supporting cast, especially Don Cheadle. It just feels like a movie that accepts itself for what it is. Lighthearted, family-friendly, and understanding the onslaught of people who will critique it for being a soulless remake of an air quote classic film of the younger millennial generation. Overall, I think an improvement on the original. Heck yeah, Space Jam 2. Next up, another animated one we have coming up, Troll Hunters. If you don't know this is a Netflix original show, executive produced by Guillermo del Toro, with 2 spin-off shows, Wizards of Arcadia, 3 Below, and these 3 shows, Troll Hunters, 3 Below, Wizards, they culminate in this full cast of characters in this movie, and sadly it's not a great conclusion to the series, as the show does have a better conclusion and leaves the universes on more solid ground, but this is more a place for me to plug the show than the movie. One of the movies I was looking more forward to this summer, and granted, this movie does have, hands down, the best graphics compared to any of the 3 shows that it's pulling from. But altogether, it is a bit of a disappointment, so watch the show, and you can kind of end up appreciating this one if you've seen the show before it. Next up, we're getting into August, folks. We're getting to the end of summer with Old, M. Night Shyamalan, back with another movie. And it's cool to see him doing stuff. You know, this movie, visually cool, and the premise is pretty ingenious. The dialogue is oh so very cringy, and pretty honestly dumbed down way too much at times, but that's not what I came to this movie for. Some of the scenes create this truly gut-wrenching tension and fear that left me kind of mentally exhausted by the end, and not many movies can get to me like that. So I really respect how much this movie can twist me up inside. Good cast, awesome twist. I really don't want to spoil this one, but the twist and conclusion, and even post-twist, is just fantastic. Easily a film working on a higher creative level than any other horror movie so far this year that I think I've seen at least. Next up, Val, a pretty intimate and exciting documentary about actor Val Kilmer's life. And this is coming post-throat cancer that's currently left him relatively without a voice. I had never known much about Val before this, but boy, I respect him as a person and an actor now so much more, and have slowly made it through his career as an actor post watching this, watching Tombstone, Top Gun, and I believe Top Secret, one of his earliest comedic films from the creative minds of Airplane, if you know that movie. But he's just one of those true creative talents. I think it's easy to say that he never got his fair shake on camera, but off camera, as this documentary shows, tells the full and profound story of Val Kilmer's life. And if you're a fan of actors and their journeys, this is one of the best. So would recommend. Next up, Jungle Cruise. Can skip that one. Next up, The Green Knight. I do have thoughts on this one. Probably the most film bro-y film of the summer, A24 take on this original Arthurian tale, The Green Knight, starring Dev Patel. It's very much anticipated for me based on the trailer. And I gotta say, the trailer did a great job of getting me excited to see this movie, because I was not a huge fan of this movie at all. But the trailer got me excited, which was cool, It got me into it. To be honest, it felt like needlessly weird and altsy at times. It's fun, cool looking things that didn't really mean anything or advance a theme or plot or aesthetic. Dev Patel, the lead, he's good. He's plays Sir Gawain, who has to go against the Green Knight eventually, but I feel it's good, but anyone could have done that. When I think great acting performances, an actor drops a performance that only they could have done. They bring things to the role that make it really their own. And as much as I like Dev getting this role, and the fact that this means he might get better stuff in the future, which, oh my God, he deserves, it could have been anyone who did this, Alicia Vikander, a powerhouse as always. I'm always blown away by Alicia Vikander. I don't know why. What an amazing actress. Keep going. Cinematography, the trailer previewed this movie so well because it made me very interested. And if I just watched it in general, I definitely would have been less enthused. But I was excited to see some of the images that I had seen in the trailer. Joel Edgerton is in this. That was cool. Good role. The direction was fine. I do wish I knew more about the original story of, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's not my thing. And to be honest, I did respect that it wasn't derivative of other popular A24 releases as I thought it was going to be. But it's also a thing where it's just wasn't my thing. I don't know. The Green Knight makeup was also awesome. And he had a good voice. And we're moving on. We have got Suicide Squad. Or The Suicide Squad. Which one is it? I think it's The Suicide Squad. It's the remake, the hard reboot. Yeah, I like how James Gunn was able to put a more all-rated spin on his usual style of superhero movie here. I think it works for the better in this case. I can safely say that this movie really isn't for me, but I do respect it quite a bit for its story structure, its cast, and just overall tonal excitement to finally get a better on-screen Suicide Squad. And though I wish Will Smith was there, I did like him a lot in the first one. Moving on, we got Free Guy, the heavily anticipated comedy, masterminded by Ryan Reynolds. It's a pretty bland, goofy, white guy-led comedy straight out of the 2000s that honestly would probably be revered today if it was covering the topics of technology and AI like 20 years ago. But alas, it's August 2021 and it falls kind of flat. It does have some pretty okay things going for it, but this movie felt like one of those movies that was more fun to make than to watch. Final thoughts. I'm glad Joe Keery is getting work outside of Stranger Things. Steve Harrington himself. Moving on, got Don't Breathe 2. I haven't seen the first one, but it sounds like that was a better movie, and this doesn't really live up to the raw tension and horror that I've been told about in the first. This movie plays it pretty safe a lot, where I wish it wouldn't, and that's just kind of a shame because the premise isn't terrible. But overall, I gotta be honest, it's tough to make a sequel where you almost have to sympathize with a guy who chains up women in his basement to give him babies. It's not cool. It kind of doesn't work for me at all, for obvious reasons. Moving on, we got Candyman. And I've had a lot of thoughts on this one rattling in my head for a while. I've tried to understand where this movie came from in a sense of headspace and how that was translated onto the silver screen. And this movie, at the end of the day, and I do hate to say this because it often feels unfair to compare them, but this does kind of feel like a lesser Get Out. And arguably, it's not too unfair to compare them because it's from executive producer Jordan Peele and produced by Monkey Paw. So I don't know. It's very heavily tied in with the same creative aesthetics and creative minds behind Get Out. For me, the magic of Get Out was it was able to tackle really salient topics of race and how ingrained problems people have with understanding race in a movie that a lot of people saw. Get Out was a big movie that year. And it's also wildly entertaining and creative, and yet you never lose the point of the movie or what was happening and what it was like specifically commenting on. It had that feeling that films like If Beale Street Could Talk or Do the Right Thing have, where it elevated and just advanced the art of cinema and brings these issues into just a beautiful and undeniable light. And that's the magic of these kind of movies. And what I really like as well is that all three of those movies, Beale Street, Do the Right Thing, Get Out, they fall under relatively different genres, and yet none of them allow themselves to fall into any one genre pitfall that takes away from their main message. And Candyman does just feel like another in a pretty unremarkable string of horror movies with a good premise, a good cast, but it doesn't deliver in an enticing way. The ending I think works in a sense, but it does sort of leave the viewer by the wayside, clearly turning your attention to the subtextual meaning rather than giving you any catharsis through like the story arc or the characters, which is too bad. I think this story kind of deserved it. And I also can't speak to it as a remake. I haven't seen the first one. I went into it blind and I still don't know what the first one is. So if there's any connections to be made between those, I have no idea. But yeah, it just, it had a lot going for it in its visuals, its cast, its themes of gentrification and erasing the past. But, it didn't really stick to its narrative guns and leave the audience with a compelling story, which I think is kind of too bad. But I guess I'll be interested to see what Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele, and his collaborators just go on to do, I suppose. Next up, Annette, a cool, crazy musical. The dramatic nature of everything does often feel pretty intense, off-putting at times, but what a story. Truly an amazing creative work by the Sparks guys, the band Sparks. Just a cool, labyrinthine story of love, loss, comedy, and societal pressure. The entire cast is amazing. You got Marion Cotillard, Simon Erberg, and Adam Driver. They really sink into these characters, and it's just one of those unique movies of 2021 that is just so different from everything else I'd been seeing in new releases. Connor, the old host of Film And, often talks about how comedians doing sets in movies never really works for him. Like when a screenwriter writes a comedian doing jokes, it's never as funny as just an actual comedy special. Like, it's not laughing. And I gotta say, Annette, this has to come close to the most compelling rendition of putting on a comedy show into a film, because it's quite effective. One left, folks. We're at it, and it is the second Marvel movie I was going to talk about, coming out in September 2021, the end of summer. You're entering fall, and we all greeted with Shang-Chi. It's cool. Awkwafina's great. It feels like Marvel is kind of setting up to do a Doctor Strange-centric fifth act of the MCU, and I'm not really against it, but in terms of how this movie will stand in the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, I feel like it may rely on the use of these characters in future movies, because it seemed pretty obvious we will be getting more movies with Shang-Chi and Awkwafina. I know her character has a name, but I'm calling her Awkwafina, and she's great. If you've seen The Farewell, you know why I think that. Overall, the movie started out cool. The preamble was a good setup. And then the next 10 to 15 minutes really drag on as Awkwafina and Sean, who is Shang-Chi, their characters just have this giant exposition dump. And oof, it's a slog. But once the story starts up after that, it is pretty fantastic. The bus scene blew my mind. Oh my goodness, I love that bus scene. And it blew my mind both. I saw this twice in theaters. Both times I went to see this, I was like, whoa, this is still really cool. After a pretty tumultuous first half between utterly dull scenes and ridiculously fun scenes, the movie smooths out once they reach the fabled city of Ta Lo, which is where a lot of the third act takes place, and it becomes just an enjoyable but also not too unique MCU movie. You know, it's another chapter where it is, I think, fun and different, but at the end of the day, MCU does have this issue of having its movies be very tonally homogenous, and I do hope they move away from that in the future. But yeah, those are 21 movies that I saw in the summer of 2021. Wow, that was just a mad dash. 32 minutes has gone by quickly, folks. Yeah, if you have any thoughts on these, please feel free to, comment on the Film and Letterboxd list under my account, DA_N. I have a review of Annette also up there. Very tongue-in-cheek. Don't take it seriously, but, enjoy it. As always, thank you so much for listening. You will be hearing me next week with what I believe is going to be the second half of my Agnes Valda tier list, which I am beyond excited for. So yeah, have a good rest of your day, and you'll hear from me next week.